I mean, this is your boy Al Mega. Welcome to a brand new Comic Crusaders special. Yo, this is one of those GeekFest specials. That's right. And we got a dope creative duo right here, a creator, a producer. But first, before I introduce them, let me get my big homie over here, Mr. Happy himself. You know what I mean? An amazing independent comic book creator and a tad of a filmmaker. And he's a panelist on some of the shows talking about film and TV, like Sloppy Spoilers and Cinema Crusaders. The one, the only Mr. Jeff Bracey. How you doing, brother?
Hey man, it's good to be here. Always a pleasure. You know how I love talking about films and filmmakers and just seeing what exciting new projects you have found to entertain me with.
And let me tell you, weren't you suspicious about this one when you got it, and did it blow your mind?
You know, I really love this sort of thing. Like I'm a big fan of independent film, especially as, and this is my opinion, other people have theirs. Lately, it seems the past several years, Hollywood has been very bankrupt for ideas. They've been very bankrupt as far as creativity and story, acting, and visuals. And this is so refreshing to see. This is, it's exciting, it's innovative, it's very creative, and it's a touching film with some fun ideas that I haven't seen on the screen in a while. So I really enjoyed it.
All right, so that's it. Bracey has spoken. He's telling you what it is, and he's about to dive in, and so are we. Let's introduce Wepa, the extraordinary filmmaker, writer, producer, educator of this awesome film called Suspicious Minds. Let me introduce the one, the only, the amazing Imela O'Reilly. How you doing?
Al and Bracey, thank you so much. That is the best introduction I've ever had. I'm really honored to be here.
No, thanks for coming through, because I know we have somebody on deck, that has been in the business too. He is a veteran to the game. He has been putting his turn out there, and he's a producer of this amazing film. Let me introduce the one, the only, the wild man himself, Mr. Joe Foley. How you doing?
Thank you. That's quite an introduction. I really appreciate it.
You guys, right? You guys got a fire film, and this is what it is. You got to bring the energy, because this is the spirit of indie, isn't it? You know what I mean? Y'all bringing something that's exciting, something
Absolutely.
different. Because Hackeywood, as Bracey was talking about, ain't doing it right now. They just keep trying to reboot. I heard they're trying to reboot Christine. Like, can you make a new film, please? Can you just please hire Imelda and get Joe on the business and start making some new stuff, something original that we could actually be attached to, as opposed to just rehashing the OD stuff. I mean, because you guys are smashing it with this film. So before I let Bracey get all wild on you guys with the crazy questions, that's what Bracey is all about. Let me just start over here. I need you guys' origin stories. I'm going to start with the lady, of course. Sí, Merda, por favor, can you please let us know where you originally from, and what was the first thing in fandom overall, no matter what it was? I just need to know, what was the first thing you ever fell in love with?
I'm originally from Ireland, and I grew up doing Irish dancing. My dance.
Oh, really?
Yes, my aunt had a dance school, and all of my father's side of the family are champion Irish dancers. So I started studying dance at the age of 6, and I would perform in competitions until I was around 11, and then I ended up segueing into something else. But I would say probably dance was my first love.
Was there any particular inspirations, as you were in dance?
Well, I was mostly inspired by the traditional Irish dance. I preferred to do the hard shoe hornpipes as opposed to the jigs and the reels, because it was more like tap dancing, which I'd seen on telly. And, Irish people have always had kind of a love affair with America. So the whole tap dancing thing seemed more fun to me than the soft shoe dance like jigs and reels. So that was sort of a big inspiration to start out. And then Irish people love telling stories. So language and words are always sing to my heart. So I love sort of writing poetry and short stories, plays, and then I eventually ended up landing in film.
Okay, right. We're gonna dive into that. We're gonna have to get into the romance as well as to how you guys got together. You know what I mean? So personally, so Big Joe in the building. Talk to me, Mr. Foley. You know what I mean? Where you originally from? And the first thing is that you fell in love with.
I'm originally from Connecticut, outside of Hartford.
Right, right.
Yeah.
East Coast in the building.
Right. Yeah. Though my dad grew up in Astoria, Queens, and so every summer we'd come down here for a week. We'd stay with our cousins, and then they'd come up to the country for a week.
Right.
And when I would go visit my cousins, they would always have the Friday and Saturday nights. There was a show called Creature Features. Yeah, so it was on some New York television station. I don't know what it was, but it was like The Mummy and Frankenstein and Abbott and Costello meet Dracula and things like that. And I just really fell in love with films from there.
Awesome. So continuing with you on that. So what led to that you picking up, into getting the creative side of this, with that love? How did you steer that, eventually?
Well, in Hartford, there's a museum called the Wadsworth Athenaeum, and on Tuesday nights, they'd always have screenings of foreign films like Godard and Foucault and Rene. And I would go there, and I go, once I was able to drive when I was 16, I was able to go there every week. And the second week I went there, I went with all my friends, and it was Breathless that we saw. And the next week, none of them wanted to come, but I just kept on going, and I really fell in love with those films. And eventually I moved to New York and started going to school in New York at NYU, and just really fell in love with filmmaking.
Oh, bet. What about you, Imela? Talk to me then. Here were you went from dance, and then you gone through your journey, and then you landed in film. So what a segue! So how did that all happen?
I'm not as highbrow as Joe Foley. So when I was 7 years old, my two aunts snuck me into the Oscar Cinema in Newbridge, County Kildare. It was the only cinema around for miles, and it was a double feature. It was a British comedy called On the Buses, and it double billed with a Vincent Price film. And I was so terrified after the Vincent Price film, but equally inspired. Always loved cinema. So I sort of found my way to it more with the American blockbusters. I remember when Jaws came out, it was a big deal in Ireland. It sort of set everybody going back to the cinema.
Do you have sharks in Ireland?
I believe so, yeah. I've never run into one person.
I've never heard of a story of a shark bite in Ireland.
I know. It's always Massachusetts or Cape Cod.
There is very, very good surfing in the southwest coast of Ireland, supposedly, and they have palm trees there as well.
Oh, really? Hey,
but no sharks. No sharks have been sighted there.
I dig it. So, your mother talking to that journey then, like picking up a camera. Was that your first part? Or was that acting? Like, what steered you first?
I actually started out acting in New York. I moved to New York when I was 18 years of age, and went to college.
Why New York?
Because my uncle Oliver took me to New York when I was 11 years old, and I fell in love with the city. I grew up in the countryside, so I always felt like I was missing out. So when I came to New York with my uncle, it was just the whole rhythm of the city just really intrigued me. The music, the amount of people, the diversity. So I kind of fell in love with New York at a young age, and ended up moving here when I was 18. And I'm still in love with New York. I think it's an amazing city.
So this film is really cathartic for you then, because it parallels your own story.
Yes, yeah.
You know what, folks? We're here talking. So before we start diving in, before I get Bracey running wild on this, so you guys understand what we're going to be getting into. We happily have the trailer, so check this out.
The bloody hound!
Woo! Wepa! I mean, that music, that gets you that energy, all these visuals, those moments. All right, definitely gets you intrigued. Bracey, the floor is now yours.
You know, it's funny, like watching the trailer, the first thing that strikes my mind it reminds me of some of the videos for Pink Floyd's music. You know, it's very surreal, especially with the music and the choice of colors and the lighting going on in the video. And you know, going back to that film, which is telling a story but also surreal in the same thing. Why did you choose that for your method of expressing a story, which could work very much in a more regular sort of narrative, but you decided to bring elements of fantasy into here?
Well, it was post-pandemic. It was just coming out of the pandemic, and normally I gear towards more dramatic stories. And I wanted to work on something fun. I decided after everybody had been stuck at home during the pandemic. So I was remembering during the pandemic the very first dance that I learned, and it was an Irish hard shoe hornpipe called King of the Fairies. And it was the first dance that I fully memorized and competed in a competition with. And so I started thinking about that dance. And then I was remembering when I was growing up in Ireland, we had our American cousins come to visit. And at the time, we didn't have any way to play music, but they brought us a cassette tape recorder.
A cassette?
And a cassette tape of Elvis Presley's The Sun Sessions.
Wow.
And I have this memory of my mother playing it over and over in the car and in the house. And it was a huge deal in our house when this cassette player and cassette tape arrived. And so I took the song and the dance and sort of structured a story around that. And then I had applied for a residency at the Catwalk Art Residency in upstate New York. And they selected our project, which sort of gave us a venue to shoot at. So I kind of structured a story around those two elements of the song and the dance. And growing up in Ireland, you know, we were invaded by the British, like many other countries around the world. So originally, people in Ireland spoke Irish or Gaelic. And everybody in Ireland has to study Gaelic in school, but the way they teach it was rather mundane. Now I think it's a little bit different. So I thought it might be fun to translate this American Icons song into Gaelic and see what it would sound like.
Yo, you fucked me up with that. I'll tell you that much. I'm listening to this. I'm like, it's Elvis, but what the what? Look, thank you for teaching me something. Because let me tell you, I was digging it.
I'll say for my part, I found that particularly delightful. I think the Gaelic language is quite beautiful. Where I live, there's a number of Irish young people who come over here every year. I live at the beach, and they come down here to vacation and work in America. And, you know, some of them still speak the Gaelic, and I pick up a word or two here and there, and then they, you know, after the summer, they go back home. But it's always pretty neat and fascinating to meet these kids and get their perspective on things. And hearing Elvis in Gaelic was something else entirely.
Right.
It adds to the surreality of it, but also hearing more from your side of things, there's this sort of fairy tale-esque perspective. I'm almost taking this now that these people step away from the rave, which is already a rave is kind of a psychedelic experience, and it goes further, almost as if they have stepped into a fairy ring and they're into this sort of alternate reality. When I consider also on Joe's part the lighting and the cinematography, how things are being framed. Could you guys address that if that played any impact?
Sure. It did. Yeah. So when we got the residency, we saw like it's they gave us a place to live, but then it was 100 acres of woods, and it was right on the Hudson River, and the Rip Van Winkle Bridge goes right past it. And there's a frog pond, and there's a swamp, and then there's another little thing where the waterfall. So there's amazing stuff just looking at it. And we knew we wanted to have these two people, walking through the night. But we also wanted to put them there for a reason, and put them in outfits, So we set it at the rave, but we realized we didn't have any money to get a lot of people to actually be in the rave. So, and we'd used animation in two of our films before, Tumbling Towards Home, and did we use it in? Yeah, I guess maybe we used it in one film before. So it just, we were able to get the rave, but not have to pay, or we didn't have the budget to hire all those people. So we just had the animation at the beginning, and we made that more psychedelic. And then we got them out into the woods where they would walk and talk.
And in fairness to Joe, one of the most challenging things was that big grass frog pond. It was pitch black there, and we only had about 3 lights, and we had one generator, and it was extremely challenging to light that frog pond. And Joe sort of pulled a magic trick out of his hat, and he put like 3 lights around the pond. And I think it just looks beautiful the way it was shot. It's
any use of mirrors, as well to help you with the light,
or some bounces.
We just didn't really have any crew to do that with.
Oh, word?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was great. We had some bubble gum and some shoestring. But, we were able to, get it together. But we also shot some of the scenes day for night. So the scenes where they're walking a lot, where we wouldn't be able to light them, we were able to shoot those, sort of at dusk, but also trying to not to see the sky, and what was great is that our editor, he had been working on this HBO series C with Aquaman, Jason Momoa.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's actually Apple from C.
Oh yeah, so Apple TV. So basically, he was working on the second season of that, and in that show, there's a lot of night scenes and a lot of night battles, but he told us that none of them were shot during at night. They were all shot during the day and shot sort of day for night. Sort of like the end of what's the Labyrinth, Pan's Labyrinth.
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro. The whole last reel, like the last 10 minutes of that film, it's all it's set at night, but it's all is shot during the day. And so we sort of just said, okay, well, this is what we got the budget for, and we've got the actors for 4 days. So let's see how much we can get. And then we're able to get, and I had a friend who was able to give us, 3 lights that we were able to play around with for the nighttime scenes.
Well, I've got to tell you, I've got to give you some major kudos on that. For one, like knowing that you're only working with 3 lights and what you were able to achieve with that particular scene, the setting that you're working with, and the fact that you were able to do day for night, and I didn't spot that. I guess my perspective on it is like I've seen so many films where day for night is clearly day for night. It's part of the framing. You can see that there are these long shadows, so there's obviously a strong light source that's coming from the sun, and they've done color correcting and everything. But wow, my hat is off to you. That was impressive. I didn't catch that at all.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's it's good that you didn't see the trick. It was. We had also looked at a lot of films. Like we looked at Pan's Labyrinth over and over again, and then there was another film called Wrist Cutters: A Love Story. It's an independent California film, but there's a whole sequence in the middle of it it's all shot. Well, the first 3 minutes of the scene are shot at night. But then everything else, like they're on the shore and they just shoot it beautifully. And if you look with a trained eye, you know that that's actually during the day, but they were able to put a blue haze over everything, and you never see the sun and you never see the sky. So we were able to put it together like that.
It was funny.
I mean, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's funny too. Joe's nephew was up there working with us, and he started becoming a little bit involved with the frog pond. So he kept bringing frogs out from the pond, which gave the pagan punk, the guy who was dressed up in the blue tartan, it gave him the idea to take one of the frogs, and he let the frog jump at the actress dressed up as Dorothy as a surprise, and it really made her jump, which was kind of a happy accident in the film.
Oh, a natural reaction. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and we were able to get a lot of people sort of like that. Yeah, so the pagan punk and also the still photographer, they both had places up there, around there. So, you know, they'd gone to look at their places, make sure everything's okay. And then they came and worked with us for a night or for 2 days. But everybody sort of just pitched in, and then I was able to get basically my niece, my nephew, my sister-in-law, my brother, my sister-in-law, like, and two of my nieces came up. So we were able to get a lot of people just to, you know, be excited about it and have a good time with it.
I really love seeing these projects that are such a labor of love, and you always see that on the screen. It always comes across. You can just tell when people are really into what they're doing and they're having a good time with it. And going back to the mystical element here, I like the pagan punk character quite a bit. Again, it feels like he is somewhat the boundary between the real world and this sort of fantasy world, even though we get into it slightly a bit with Elvis's radio that talks to the dead. But that's like, it's so overt when he magically produces the frog from his mouth, which causes Dorothy to jump. And again, he's the one who sort of chases them out of the woods back into reality. I don't know if that's something you planned, but that's what I'm getting out of it. And so if it's not, it's a very happy accident as a viewer on my part.
Yeah, we definitely planned the alternate reality. So when you see the sound waves animated coming from the Panasonic radio, because that was the radio cassette that I had as a teenager, and my French uncle who lived in New York gifted me that, and that was sort of a big deal too. So I wanted to be specific about the radio representing that time. But every time you see the animated waves coming out of the radio, it's sort of like is the ghost of the dead father coming through. And I don't know if you kind of caught that the father was sort of putting him down, and then
very much so.
yeah, and then but it's sort of comedic as well. And then as the film progresses, he sort of puts his ghosts of the past to rest, which sort of lets him move on with his life, you know.
Yeah, I like that element quite a bit. It's interesting because without the animations and whatnot, you could really take this another way, that he's had sort of a dissociative break, if you will, because I noticed there's the cassette tape in the player, and if you wanted to take a darker spin, this guy is so traumatized by what happened with his father. He has just recorded all these terrible sayings, and he has this sort of script that it responds to, because, like, why is Dorothy able to hear this if he's talking to the dead? But when you realize you've stepped outside of your normal bounds of reality, and I like the ending where there's that resolution between the two, and he is able to put things aside. And you know, this has the feeling of a fairy tale to it, and it's kind of comforting in that way. It doesn't go into that grim territory, but more of the softened fairy tales that we get as children.
Yeah, and even that scene where Dorothy is at the tree, you know, where she's telling her kind of her monologue. I wanted to find like a tree that sort of reminded me of Pan's Labyrinth, because I remember
fantastic tree.
Yeah, the trees in that film, and the story is beautiful too, were so mystical and beautiful. And so it was kind of fun when we could light the fire and she sort of found a way to climb up the tree and sort of make it playful and deliver her monologue. It was, I thought the actress did a really great job in that.
Yeah, it was great for us to be able to work with Gina because she'd been on Broadway right before we did this, and then the next summer she was in The Hanged Man as well.
Right.
Yeah, and they just sort of loved the script and said, yeah, let's do that. But it's also like
you're skipping everything. They did this, they did that, they loved the script. What happened in between? Like, how did you even know to send them the script and say you want to be a part of this?
Okay, I guess he wants to know, like, where did you get these fantastic actors?
Yeah, where exactly? What's the origin of you finding the cast? Like, did you know specifically who you wanted, or did you have a casting? How did it work out?
So I kind of cast it myself because there's a big, like you mentioned, Bracey, there's a big Irish community in New York. And a lot of Irish actors, and there's Irish repertory theater. So I had known Gina from the Irish community, and also Ed Malone, who plays Elvis. So I just met them for a coffee, and I said, look, I'm working on this project, and I didn't even have a script yet, and I kind of pitched them the idea. And Ed sort of said to me, well, do you have a script? And I said, well, not yet, but it's coming. So I ended up having a coffee with them first, and then I drafted up a draft of the script, and then we did a read through and sort of workshopped it from there, and got them excited about it. And I think the whole project came together very quickly because we had the deadline of the residency. So we kind of had to deliver the film quite quickly because we knew we were going to shoot it up there. So I think it was like maybe 6 to 8 weeks. But after the pandemic, there was no time like the present in terms of procrastination. So I think everybody was very hungry to jump into a creative project because, people had not been in production or for a year and a half.
No, I get that. I've had the pleasure of the past year or so talking to a number of independent filmmakers who just found a remote location that they could film in to get around the COVID restrictions because everybody was just dying to get back to work.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting that, so when we started submitting this to Irish film festivals, one of the first festivals we got accepted to was the Belfast International Film Festival. And we had been, the two of us had been up to Belfast to visit friends 16 years ago. And 16 years ago it was a different place. It was a bit scarier. But when we went up there this time, everybody just seemed to be happy to see us, and just everybody was very, very friendly. And they're all, the undercurrent was like, we don't want to go back to what we had, and we're just going to stay here. And people were really, really friendly. But I had found out that Gina's mother, who was also an actress, and her father, who was directed a lot of theater in England and in Northern Ireland, her mother had actually been in Some Mother's Sons. She played a friend of, I think it's Helen Mirren. She was Helen Mirren's friend.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it was really interesting to be there. And then to see some of the places where they'd shot that film, and then to find out that Gina's mother had been in it.
Yeah, and the other fun thing in Belfast was that they kind of got the humor of the film, because I know the humor is a little bit Irish. I don't know how you felt about that, Bracey.
I actually watched quite a few foreign films, a wide variety of films. I am really just an all-out cinemaphile. I have my favorite genres and things as anybody else, but I started watching films from Japan and China, then later on Korea, Finland, Ireland, Russia, just anywhere
Australia.
There's a good to be watched. I want to see it. So I have maybe a better appreciation than the average American viewer might. But to your point about Gina being a stage actor, I think in that scene with the tree, that's where that comes across, because that particular scene felt very much like a play to me. And I can see the experience of Gina as a stage actor because she's using her environment so effectively.
Right. Yeah. And it was sort of amazing the way that she just sort of took to it. And, she sort of pretty much choreographed her own, way to go about it. And that just, but because she used the whole stage, and she's up and down and back and forth. It really, really worked out well, and so then we just sort of watching what she was doing, we were able to get all the coverage that we needed pretty quickly.
It was interesting too with the 100 acres. It's a wide open, vast space, so you have to find a way to block and direct within that kind of space. And at first, when we went on the location scout and we were looking around, it can feel a little overwhelming. But then once we kind of broke the script down and, did some run-throughs for camera, we found ways to kind of use the space in a more creative way.
Now, I appreciate that because, again, and that's one of my favorite scenes is where she's being expressive and theatrical, and Ed is responding to her. And they have a wonderful chemistry in that moment. But further, again, and like she's going up all these levels. I imagine like that must have been fun keeping up with her as she's doing her own thing. And it would have been so easy and so kind of common to just have them both kind of sitting down on the ground and doing that. But fortunately, both yourselves and your cast were very clever. And another thing I really liked is when Elvis is, getting into his bit, you have this very wide open space. And it's almost like an auditorium, and he is framed by this tree that is lit up by all these extraordinary lights and colors, and it feels like fireworks or a concert stage with all the crazy lighting you have there. I really like that particular image.
Look at this poster right there. That tells you
Exactly.
There's a party going on, baby. And I need a ghost suit just like that, baby, so I could be golden. Because woo, party time.
The opportunities you had to light the gold suit, like it's almost a character in itself. The way you get to play around with that.
That's what I'm saying. Everything had its own persona and a feel and an energy to it. So you guys definitely are bringing something special.
Yeah, no, I mean Ed really, he filled out that suit, and with just the whole costume, he made it work, because he'd actually trained as a clown, and he's one. He teaches.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so he teaches up at SUNY Purchase, and I think he teaches other. He teaches a lot of clown stuff, and I think he studied in Paris. But he was really able to inhabit that character and really, bring the elements.
And he only eats bananas and blueberries and potatoes. That's his entire diet.
What?
Okay. That's the most unusual diet I've heard yet, but that's
I agree. It was
if he's alive this long, something's working for him, all right?
Yes.
I definitely did enjoy the way he physically embodied the role as well. I'm a great fan of physical action, be it dancing, martial arts, or comedic actors who really express themselves through full body movement. And Ed's got that in spades. It was really fun to watch him perform.
Yeah. So what are we doing? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Imelda.
No, go ahead.
Because I want to ask, what do you guys have in store for us? Because I know this is traveling right now with the film fest and all, doing your thing. I mean, do we expect maybe an expansion of this universe, more projects, within this universe? Is this the one and done? Are we gonna get more from the O'Reilly Foleyverse over here?
Yeah, we have a new project we're working on called Under the Wolf's Cloak.
Oh, I know the title. What's going on? And
it's a rewritten version of Little Red Riding Hood from a feminist perspective.
Interesting.
Ooh, okay.
So it's a poem that I wrote, and we've already recorded the music with 2 marimbas, and we have a Greek chorus singing, a choir. And Joe, we're shooting it as a 360 virtual reality film in its first incarnation.
Oh, say word.
Oh.
And it has dancers and a choreographer. So we're creating this meld of poetry, song, music, dance, and 360 virtual reality. So and eventually it's going to be projected on a planetarium at James Madison University.
Ooh.
Holy cow. Okay.
You got me so effing excited right now, yo.
That sounds like such an experience. I am
such
a fan of unusual cinema
and immersive as well. That's immersive. You're in it.
You know, like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where the audience decided to participate in the movie, and strange things like Liquid Sky or Xanadu or Repo the Genetic Opera, and now you're taking this to a whole new level. Yeah, a 3D film. Like,
go indie, baby. Go indie. Woo! I love it. Big Joe and Imela, yes, please bring it, change the game, and make sure you trademark the shit out this shit.
Just trying to imagine.
I want to see horror movies like this one. I'm just spinning around in my chair. Where's this motherfucker? You know?
Yeah, I've worn one of these 3D camera setups before just to see what it was like, and you know, like, oh, I'm looking over here. There's something going on over here. It's like,
yeah,
just imagine trying the logistics of just trying to keep things in frame as it is, because you know if it's not in the frame, it doesn't exist. But now the frame is literally going to be everywhere. Wow.
Let me ask, you know, before we go, the technology behind trying to produce a film on that level. I mean, how easy is that to put together? I mean, that must be insane. Camera-wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. We have basically the camera. I was doing a lot of fashion photography with this. It's called an InstaPro 360. And it's the size of a volleyball. It has 6 cameras in it, 6 microphones in it, and it shoots 8K. So it shoots 8K. So we were doing a lot of stuff for Supima Cotton out in the cotton fields in California's Central Valley, and we got some amazing stuff, amazing time-lapse stuff. Some really amazing sun. You know, we got there at 4:30 in the morning. Sun came up at 4:45, and then we stayed there until like 9:30 at night when the sun had gone down. And what was really amazing is, so you can see all around, and you can see these little. They look like matchboxes at first, but they're the harvesters, and as they come closer and closer, they're the size of garbage trucks. You know, and you know, and so that's amazing. But also, this was in the fall, and so you could hear the Chinese, the Canadian geese going down to Mexico. Like, but you could hear it. Like, you hear them over here, and then they go over your head, and then you see them over there, and it's like,
oh, really? So
yeah,
not just the video, but also the sound is immersive. So it'll move with the, you know. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And so we're trying to do that, and so we filmed this Monday. Yeah, we still have one more day of filming to do because we want to have it out in the woods. So we had 15 dancers for this piece, but 4 of the dancers start off and do a little piece at the very beginning, and in the middle, those same 4 dancers come back in. And so I'm trying to, the next time, I'm hoping in 2 weeks, because everybody's slammed right now because all their projects are due. So I'm hoping in 2 weeks to get back down there, and there's this little piece of woods on the campus. And so at sunset, I'm hoping to set up the camera there and then have do some time lapse for the whole afternoon, but then have the dancers come in where they do the opening, and the opening is just very just simple movements, but dance movements. You know, we could go from the woods, then we can go into the rehearsal space, which is nicely put together. You know, and then we're also trying to get the chorus, you know, so we want to shoot with the chorus as well. So,
and the wolf is meant to represent the patriarchy, which is probably very timely, you know.
There's 2 questions I definitely want to ask you guys before we end up ending.
Those are the last 2. Before they go.
Right. First question then. Why Dorothy and Elvis as representations of the characters?
Because they're 2 American icons, and I feel that Ireland has a long history with America for immigration. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of a nod to America and to Ireland, and there's this sort of love affair, I think, between Ireland and America. And I wanted to try and find a blending of cultures. So that whole scene where the young girl is dressed up as Dorothy and dancing on the bogland in Ireland. I grew up footing turf on the bog with my uncles. And I had this image, if I had my way and the budget that I wanted 3 generations of Irish dancers on the bog dancing simultaneously. but I didn't have the budget for that. So instead, those were my cousins that were dancing on the bog, the two
Okay.
young dancers, and
'Cause
I wanted to combine the elements of Irish culture and elements of American culture and sort of blend them, and to suggest this idea of dualism and identity, because we all come from different places. And I was born in Ireland, and I'm an Irish citizen, but I've become an American citizen, and I feel like both of those parts of my identity are significant and mean something. So it was sort of this blending of cultures and exploration of identity.
Right, as Elvis expresses in the film himself.
Right.
I actually like that part. Like, if you become a transplant, like how much of you stays from your homeland as you're adopting a new homeland.
Yeah.
Now, I had actually wondered if you'd chosen those two particular icons because they both ended tragically, and if this was these characters who are obviously going through difficult things in their lives, if this was part of their overcoming the tragedy by the end of the film.
Right. I think, yeah, so those two characters did, and, well, tragically. I mean, Dorothy does, Judy Garland ended tragically, but Dorothy doesn't really end tragically. And that Elvis, that Gold Lame Elvis, he's sort of the eternal youthful Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like it's a very positive look, taking
peak.
Yeah.
Well, it's multi-layered, and he references Phil Oakes as well, because Phil Oakes used to wear the gold lame suit also. So I think it's sort of a reflection on the diaspora and what it does when you leave a homeland, and you have this sort of experience this homesickness or gap between where you were born and where you're living now. And that's multi-layered for everybody. I think, America is filled with so many immigrants, and they have a homeland that they've left behind. So it was sort of an exploration into what it is to be an immigrant and to find your place elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question then will actually dovetail into what you spoke of before about wanting to have the dancers on the bogland out there. Again, I don't know if this was something planned, but the dance scene between Elvis and Lola, where they're part of the rave, but they're also separate from it. They're in their own little world because they're sharing this sort of thing. And in that dance, we see what we expect out of dance. Dance is often quite emotional, sometimes joyful, sometimes just it's all about being kinetic and technique, and sometimes it's sexual. We have all those elements, but now when we go to the young Dorothy and the other young man dancing in the bogland there, their expressions, well, to me, almost looked distressed. And I wondered if that was on purpose, because usually when you see people dancing, they have some sort of joyful expression. If it's a professional dancer, you're supposed to do that. And other people just dancing, like in the rave scene, we can see that people are enjoying themselves. Was that meant to represent something, or am I just digging way too deep?
No, I think that neither of them had acted in a film before, and I don't think they'd performed for camera. So it's quite intensive because we had to do several takes. So we're outside, it was, fairly cold, and we had to keep shooting, over and over. So I think part of that might have been just that they weren't used to dancing in that context,
Right.
Honestly, that's what I think.
Yeah. So one of the other things was that one of the memories that Imelda said that she had was that when she was younger and she was doing all these dances, they had the competitions inside most of the times, but sometimes they would have them outside, but because you couldn't really dance on the ground, they would put a door, and so they'd take the door off the hinges and they put it on the ground. Then whoever was dancing would dance on that. But to rack things up more, they'd take 4 pints of Guinness and they put the Guinness on each corner of the door. So you were supposed to make the noise, but you weren't supposed to spill any of the Guinness. And that's sort of, in my mind, that's what I was hoping we'd get. All these aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews, on these doors in the bog. But the budget didn't,
that's really neat. I wish you could have gotten that. But as for me, it's funny how sometimes, like, you create a piece of art and you have your intentions for it, your ideas, your hopes, your dreams, you release it to the world. And it's always interesting to see what other people get out of it. And that just added an interesting layer for me, because it just seemed to represent things in the two characters' childhood that, because of the facial expressions of the young people, because they're dealing with stuff they haven't dealt with before. And I just felt like this was like, okay, here's where they were, and then here's where they are. And so it gave me another layer to the story that was very fun.
And it's kind of nostalgic too,
Mm-hmm.
like nostalgia for, childhood and growing up and things that you did when you were younger. But yeah, and also a nod to both Ireland and America, sort of acknowledging both what they've given one another, how they've inspired one another, and the blending of the two cultures.
Oh no, for sure. Being someone from South Carolina, my culture really comes from the Irish. That's where the immigrants came. So like, so much of our music and our ways come from your homeland. So I really deeply appreciate what you've done here.
Oh, thank you.
I had heard that the Savannah St. Patrick's Day Parade is the third largest St. Patrick's Day in the country, behind New York and Chicago. I could be wrong, but
I think you are correct.
Are you trying to go on an Irish parade crawl, and get bent on everyone? Let's go. I'm ready to party with you. Because I know I'm a lot of Irish brothers and sisters in New York. It was funny growing up. They would tell me that the Irish people were basically the European Puerto Ricans. I said, all right, no wonder we love each other so much. Let's go. Let's rock out. But I think you guys' energy, I love what you guys are doing. This movie is dope, and what I see from the future, from what you just said, you guys have blown our minds, and we are anticipating and just waiting until that drops too. But most importantly,
very
you
excited
gotta
for
follow
the
them now.
projects.
Yeah, so this is what you do. Follow my big homie here, Joe, on Instagram. There's beer for all the bulls. What's that all about?
well, it's a joke. It's a Hemingway joke, So basically, it was at a party, and everybody had to say, had to talk like Hemingway, and so I raised the glass and said, "Beer for all the bulls," and then my friend said, "And gimlets for all the gazelles."
Wonderful. You can also check him out on Instagram at Joe Foley Films. All right. And then check out Imelda on Instagram at P Swoon. That's a little P Swoon SWOON. All right. Check out also on Facebook and Instagram at Suspicious Minds A Movie. All right. But visit the website at ImeldaO'Reilly.com, baby. Check it out. Check out what the future holds here. This lady is on a mission. She's about to kick ass and take the industry by storm, baby, with my man Big Joe Foley here. Bracey, thank you, Mr. Happy, for joining us once again.
Well, it's a pleasure.
And dropping that science as you always do as we chat with these amazing and wonderful guests that we have. Mi gente, you know what it is. Check out everything Comic Crusaders, Undercover Caves, and My Crusaders. Much love. We really appreciate each and every view, like, and comment. So, please subscribe, show the love. You know what it is. Mega, Bracey, Imelda, and Joe, we out. Hasta la próxima, baby. Huepa!